The day humanity was left behind. The Galactic Council was supposed to be a place of unity, a gathering of the most powerful species in the galaxy. But on this day, it was nothing more than a courtroom for humanity's fate. The representatives of every major alien species were seated around the enormous circular table. They looked at the human ambassador, his face calm but his eyes filled with a mix of hope and dread. The message was simple, yet it shattered everything. The humans had pleaded for help. Alien warships were advancing on the outer colonies of Earth, ships carrying soldiers who were known for their ruthless efficiency. The humans had tried everything: diplomacy, trade, even calling in favors from allies. But now, they were at their limit. They needed support, they needed resources, they needed military aid. The only people who could save them were sitting in front of them: the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful races. But what happened next would change everything. One by one, the council members spoke. The reptilian species from the distant star system spoke first. They scoffed, their yellow eyes narrowing with disdain. "Earth is weak," their leader hissed. "Your military is nothing compared to the power of the Velar or the Cyraxians. What do you expect from us? Assistance for a failed race." The laughter that followed echoed through the vast council chambers, and the human ambassador's heart sank. The next to speak was a tall, insectoid creature from the planet Skratov. Its long, sharp mandibles clicked together as it spoke. "We've heard the reports," it said, its voice like the sound of gravel scraping against metal. "Human technology is crude. You lack the firepower to defend yourselves. Your colonies are already lost. It's time for Earth to accept its place in the galaxy." Another wave of mocking laughter spread across the room. The human ambassador tried to speak, to plead once again for help, but his voice faltered. The words he had prepared seemed weak in the face of such ridicule. "We are asking for help because we value life," he said quietly, "because we know that unity, even between species so different from one another, can overcome even the greatest threats. If you stand by us, we can push back together." But the room grew silent. The humans waited, but there was no answer. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the chairperson of the Galactic Council, a being from a distant star system, a species known for its cold logic and ruthless efficiency, spoke. Its voice was calm, but it carried the weight of finality. "Humanity is no longer a priority," the chairperson said. "Your species has failed to advance. The galaxy moves on without you." And with that, the decision was made. Earth was abandoned. The human ambassador stood frozen in place, his mind racing. His people had given everything to the galaxy. They had helped build interstellar trade routes, defended planets from invaders, and worked tirelessly to bridge the gaps between civilizations. Yet, when Earth asked for help, they were met with scorn. The chamber doors slid open, and one by one, the representatives of the galaxy filed out, leaving the humans alone in the center of the vast hall. The doors slammed shut with a finality that made the ambassador's heart drop. He felt his knees tremble, but he stood tall. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The human leaders were shaken, but they did not break. They knew what had to be done. They gathered the brightest minds from across the planet, pulling together all their resources. The humans had always been underestimated, but now they would show the galaxy just how wrong they had been. They had been humiliated, abandoned, and left to fend for themselves. But humanity was resilient. Humanity was stubborn, and humanity was ready to fight back. The Galactic Council had made a grave mistake, and they would soon learn that underestimating humans was a dangerous gamble. For weeks, the news of the Council's decision spread throughout the Earth. The people were angry, heartbroken, but most of all, they were determined. Across the planet, the leaders of Earth began to gather what resources they could: military, technology, intelligence. They began to mobilize their forces. But the response was not one of vengeance, at least not yet. The humans knew that this was not a fight they could win with brute force alone. They needed to be clever. They needed to outthink the galaxy. The silence from Earth was deafening to the rest of the galaxy. No one heard from Earth, and that was exactly what the humans wanted. They knew that the Council believed humanity was finished, that the galaxy was better off without them. But this was far from the truth. Earth was not weak, and humanity was not helpless. Days turned into weeks, and still, the Council continued their business, moving on to other matters. They assumed humanity would fade away, forgotten like so many other species that had once been part of the Great Galactic Alliance. But no one knew what Earth was doing in secret. What the galaxy didn't realize was that humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to innovate, and to never give up. Earth had been pushed to the brink. But that was when humanity did what no one expected. They made plans in the shadows. They built something no one saw coming. The rest of the galaxy might have turned their backs on Earth, but humanity would soon make them regret it. The silence after the Council's decision was deafening. For days, Earth's leaders sat in their war rooms, gathering every bit of information, every available resource, and every piece of technology they could muster. The world's greatest minds worked tirelessly to devise a plan that no one had ever thought of before. The galaxy had left them behind, but that only fueled the fire in the hearts of humanity. If the Council thought they were finished, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Across Earth, the leaders knew what had to be done. The human race had been scorned, but that didn't mean it was over. The humans weren't going to fall apart or fade away into obscurity. Instead, they would do what they had always done best. They would adapt and evolve, creating new technologies, new strategies, and new methods to turn the tables. They had been pushed aside by beings who had long underestimated them. Now, it was time to prove just how dangerous that mistake was. The first step in their strategy was to revive Earth's long-hidden fleet. It had been buried for centuries, left to decay and forgotten by most. In a distant corner of the planet, deep beneath the oceans and far from the prying eyes of the Council's spies, humanity had stored its most powerful ships. Massive, ancient warships that had once been the backbone of Earth's defense. The ships were older, but their firepower was unmatched. And most importantly, they were designed with one thing in mind: survival. The human leaders activated the old fleet. They brought the warships back to life, making repairs that no one believed were possible. The engines roared to life again, and the old ships were reborn with a fierce purpose. They didn't have the advanced technology of the newer ships built by other species, but they had something far more dangerous: the sheer willpower and cunning of humanity. But reviving the fleet was just the beginning. Humans also turned their attention to building a new generation of warships, sleek, fast, and deadly. Earth's best engineers and military strategists came together to design ships that combined old-world technology with new innovations. They built powerful weapons, reinforced shields, and systems that would give them an edge no one had anticipated. Every scientist, every engineer, and every soldier worked together, united by the single goal of proving that humanity was not a species to be overlooked. As Earth's ships began to take shape, another critical aspect of the plan began to unfold: the gathering of allies. The Council had assumed that all the other races would remain neutral or even side with the invaders. But the humans knew something they didn't. The Council wasn't as united as it seemed. There were cracks in the foundation, rivalries that the humans could exploit. Humans had always been diplomats, able to strike deals and make connections where others failed. They'd reached out to species who had been wronged by the Council, who had been sidelined and forgotten. Slowly, the human ambassadors began to form alliances with these species. They offered trade agreements, protection, and the promise of mutual benefit. Slowly but surely, a coalition of races began to form, a group of the galaxy's forgotten, the overlooked, and the downtrodden, all united by a common cause: revenge against the Galactic Council, and the protection of Earth. But even as they worked to forge these alliances, the humans knew they had to do more. They had to send a message, a clear, undeniable message that the Council could not ignore. Earth had been abandoned, and now it was time for the galaxy to see just how strong humanity could be when pushed to its limits. In the shadows, deep inside Earth's secret military bases, humanity's greatest minds continued to work on something far more dangerous. They were not just building ships and weapons. They were building something that would shake the very foundation of the galaxy, something that would leave the Council in shock. It was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a weapon built on the principles of human ingenuity and a fierce desire to survive. The weapon was not designed to destroy entire planets, like the massive ships of the alien races, but instead, it was built to be precise, calculated, and devastating in its effectiveness. The weapon could strike where the enemy was most vulnerable, where they least expected it. For months, humanity's secret operations continued. They trained their best soldiers, tested their weapons, and refined their strategies. Their military forces were no longer just a small, insignificant group of people. They were a force to be reckoned with, a threat that the galaxy was soon going to regret underestimating. As the days passed, Earth began to show signs of life. The ships that had once sat dormant in the depths of the oceans began to take to the skies once again. The fleet of powerful warships began to assemble, their engines roaring as they rose from their hidden bases. Earth's once dormant military was now a formidable force, a symbol of humanity's resolve to fight back. But the most important step in humanity's plan was still to come. It wasn't just about rebuilding their fleet or arming themselves for battle. It was about making a statement. The humans were going to strike first, to show the galaxy that they were no longer the weak, helpless species that had been cast aside. They would strike at the heart of the Galactic Council itself, making them pay for abandoning Earth and underestimating the humans. The time for waiting was over. The time for action had arrived, and when humanity's ships finally soared into the stars, no one would be ready for the chaos they were about to unleash. As humanity's plans began to take shape, a quiet tension filled the air. The universe, once indifferent to Earth's struggle, was about to witness a shift unlike anything it had ever known. The Galactic Council, in their arrogance, had underestimated the power of humanity's resilience. They thought that abandoning Earth would mean the end, but they were wrong. Humanity had been quietly preparing for something far greater, something no one saw coming. The newly formed human fleet began to move, gliding through the cosmos with a purpose. The ships were a blend of ancient, reawakened technology and newly designed, sleek warships that could move with lightning speed. Earth's finest engineers had poured everything into these vessels, ensuring that they were not only powerful but unpredictable. These ships had capabilities that no one else in the galaxy could imagine. The first target was the Council's supply line, an intricate network of vessels that carried resources and weapons to the front lines. The humans knew that this was the most vulnerable part of the Council's operations. If they could strike here, they would cripple the enemy's ability to fight back effectively. But the humans did not just want to send a message. They wanted to send a warning. Earth was no longer weak, and they were no longer the forgotten species. The fleet, led by Admiral Serena Marshall, silently positioned itself in the dark corners of the galaxy, hidden from any scanners or prying eyes. The Admiral was a seasoned veteran, and she knew the importance of keeping their movements hidden. The humans had to catch the enemy off guard, or it would risk everything. The moment they revealed themselves, there would be no turning back. For days, the fleet moved silently through the darkened space, keeping to the shadows. The Council ships passed by, oblivious to the impending danger. There was a sense of calm before the storm, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. No one expected the humans to have such precision, such stealth. But that was the key. Humans had always excelled in the art of surprise. Finally, the moment arrived. As the supply fleet passed into position, Admiral Marshall gave the signal. The silence was broken by the sudden roar of engines. The first ship, an ancient warship known as the Defender, unleashed its firepower. The bright beams of energy streaked across the blackness of space, striking the supply vessels with devastating force. The explosion was like a sudden sun blooming in the distance, casting a bright light across the emptiness. Within moments, the rest of the fleet joined the attack. Ships of all sizes, some ancient and battle-worn, others sleek and modern, opened fire, striking the Council's vessels with deadly accuracy. The supply fleet, caught completely off guard, was obliterated in a matter of minutes. The humans had made their first strike, and it was as flawless as it was devastating. But this attack wasn't just about destroying ships. It was about sending a clear message. Earth was back. The Galactic Council, in all their arrogance, had thought they could control the fate of humanity. Now, the humans had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. As the Council's fleet scrambled to respond, Admiral Marshall ordered her ships to retreat into the shadows once more. Their mission was accomplished, and they had left no trace of their presence. The humans had struck quickly and efficiently, like a swarm of predators, and then disappeared into the vastness of space. But the Council wasn't finished yet. They quickly sent out search parties to find the human fleet, their ships scouring the nearby sectors in a desperate attempt to locate the source of the attack. However, the humans were long gone, moving deeper into space, leaving behind only the remnants of the supply fleet and the burning wreckage of what had once been their enemy's pride. On Earth, the news of the successful strike spread like wildfire. People who had once felt abandoned and weak were now filled with pride and hope. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were capable of standing up for themselves, and they had done it with precision and power. The message was clear. Earth was no longer a planet to be overlooked. Back in the heart of the Galactic Council, the leaders were furious. They had expected to easily control Earth, to suppress any rebellion. But they had miscalculated. The Council was not used to seeing such a decisive and coordinated attack from a species they had long considered beneath them. The Council's leaders, who had thought their power was unchallenged, now found themselves scrambling to deal with the reality of what had just happened. Admiral Marshall's success had only been the beginning. The humans had taken the first step in a plan that was much bigger than anyone realized. They weren't just going to defend themselves. They were going to take the fight to the heart of the Galactic Council. The strike had been a small victory, but it had shown the humans' power. And now, as Earth's leaders prepared for what came next, they knew one thing for sure. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. As the Council's ships continued to search for Earth's fleet, the humans were already preparing for their next move. The first strike had been a success, but it was just the beginning of a larger plan. The Council had underestimated Earth once. Now, it was their turn to feel the wrath of humanity's unexpected strength. The attack on the Galactic Council's supply fleet sent ripples through the galaxy. The news spread quickly. Humans had struck. The Council, in its arrogance, had always believed that Earth was nothing more than a forgotten backwater, a planet too weak to resist their control. But now, they faced the reality of a people they had underestimated. The Council's response came swiftly. The Council's leaders, shaken but still powerful, called an emergency meeting in a grand hall on the largest and most powerful ship in the galaxy, known as the Exemplar. The most influential leaders gathered. These were beings of immense power, leaders of ancient civilizations that had conquered vast stretches of space. Their influence stretched across many worlds, and their military might was unmatched. Or so they thought. The Council's high command, comprised of beings from different planets and races, immediately recognized the threat humanity posed. They knew they had to respond, or their power in the galaxy would be questioned. But what was the best way to strike back? They couldn't afford to make the same mistake twice. Their strategy needed to be precise, overwhelming, and swift. The first decision was to send an entire fleet, one of the most formidable the Council had ever assembled. This fleet would not only retaliate against the humans, but would also ensure that no such attack could ever happen again. The fleet, consisting of dozens of advanced warships, was the epitome of the Council's military technology. With shields that could withstand the most powerful blasts, weapons that could destroy entire planets, and fighters that could pierce any defense, the fleet was an unstoppable force. The Council's fleet set its course for Earth, its engines firing with the roar of 1,000 suns. As they moved through space, the tension among the Council leaders was palpable. The situation had escalated far beyond what they had anticipated. But it wasn't just the fleet that concerned them. They had to understand how the humans had done it, how they had managed to strike with such precision, with such power. What kind of technology had they developed? Meanwhile, back on Earth, the news of the attack had spread, and humanity was buzzing with excitement. The first strike had been a victory, but it was only the beginning. As the human fleet disappeared back into the stars, Earth's leaders knew they had to prepare for the retaliation that was sure to come. The Council wasn't going to back down, and the next confrontation would be even more dangerous. Admiral Serena Marshall, the leader of the human fleet, had been busy organizing a defense strategy. The humans had no illusions about what was coming. The Council's response would be swift and deadly. But Marshall was determined. Earth might be outmatched in terms of firepower, but humans had something no other species possessed: ingenuity. They had survived through years of hardship, and they had learned to adapt to whatever the universe threw at them. Marshall, standing on the bridge of the flagship Endurance, stared out at the stars. Her crew was preparing, running simulations, and maintaining the ships. The fleet was ready, but they knew that the coming battle would be unlike any they had ever faced. Earth had no choice but to fight for its survival. The days passed, and Earth's fleet moved into position. They hid in the dark corners of space, knowing that the Council's ships were coming. The humans had already learned to use the darkness of space to their advantage. With stealth technology and decoys, they were ready to launch another ambush. But this time, they would be outnumbered. They would be facing a fleet of unimaginable size, capable of devastating everything in its path. Then, one day, the Council fleet appeared. It was massive, larger than anything Earth had ever seen. Hundreds of warships, some the size of cities, emerged from a nearby asteroid field, their weapons charged and ready for battle. The vastness of the fleet seemed to consume the space around them. The humans had never faced anything like it. It was a show of force, designed to intimidate, to overwhelm, and to destroy. But despite the fear that gripped the hearts of some of the human soldiers, Admiral Marshall remained calm. She knew this would be their hardest test yet, but she also knew that they had one advantage the Council had never considered. The humans were fighters. They fought for survival, for their families, for their homes. They didn't give up. They never surrendered. "Prepare for battle," Marshall commanded, her voice steady. "We fight for Earth." As the Council's fleet neared Earth, the first signs of the battle emerged. The Council began firing its weapons, huge blasts of energy that tore through space with terrifying force. The sound of the blasts, though muffled in the vacuum of space, still shook the human ships. But the humans didn't panic. They had prepared for this. The human fleet launched a series of decoys, creating a maze of false targets that the Council ships began to pursue. At the same time, smaller human ships, using stealth technology, darted in and out of the Council fleet, launching surprise attacks on the enemy's more vulnerable vessels. It was a strategy designed to confuse and disrupt, to make the Council fleet question where the real threats were coming from. Admiral Marshall watched from the bridge as the battle unfolded. The human fleet was holding its own, but it was clear that this would be a long and difficult fight. The Council had underestimated humanity before, and now they were beginning to realize their mistake. Earth was no longer the weak, forgotten planet it had once been. As the battle raged on, the humans remained determined. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. The Council had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated the will of humanity. The first phase of the battle ended in a standstill, with both sides suffering significant losses. But the humans had proven one thing: they could hold their own. The Council, though powerful, now faced a reality they had never expected. Earth was not going to be an easy conquest. This was only the beginning. The battle for Earth had only just begun, but already the tide was beginning to turn. The humans had made it clear that they would not back down. The question now was, how far would the Council go to try and break them? And how far would humanity go to make sure that never happened? As the fleets drifted apart, both sides knew one thing for sure: the next encounter would be even more intense. The humans had proved themselves capable of far more than anyone had imagined, and the Council had no choice but to respond in kind. The galaxy would never be the same again. The battle for Earth had become a symbol across the galaxy. The Council, the most powerful organization in the known universe, had always prided itself on its ability to crush any resistance. But now, after facing humanity's unexpected defiance, they were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about Earth. What they hadn't anticipated was the sheer will and determination of its people. They had underestimated the heart of a species that had fought for its survival time and time again. The humans, having held their ground during the initial encounter, knew that the real challenge was yet to come. Earth had faced its first test, and it had passed. But it was only one battle in what was shaping up to be a long, grueling war. The Council would not simply retreat after such a failure. They would regroup, reassess, and return stronger than ever. The question was, could humanity keep up the fight? Admiral Serena Marshall sat on the bridge of the Endurance, her flagship, overlooking a vast map of space displayed before her. The battle had left scars on their fleet, but it had also given them the strength to press on. They had dealt a blow to the Council, but that blow had cost them dearly. The battle had shown Earth's potential, but now the humans had to dig even deeper to hold their ground. Marshall had never seen her crew so focused. Every officer, every soldier, every engineer was working together with a singular goal: to protect Earth. They knew that their families, their homes, their very existence depended on the outcome of the next phase of the war. There was no room for failure. "Admiral," a young officer called out from the tactical station, "the Council fleet is moving into position. They've launched more ships, several hundred, at least. They're preparing for a full-scale assault." Marshall's eyes hardened. The humans had fought hard, but they knew that the Council's next move would be far more calculated. This wasn't going to be a simple attack. The Council had learned from its earlier mistakes. They would come for Earth with everything they had. "We need to stay one step ahead," Marshall muttered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. She knew that if they were going to survive, they needed to turn the tables once more. The humans could not match the Council's sheer numbers, but they had something more valuable: their adaptability. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "We'll use the asteroid fields around Earth as cover. We'll set up traps, use our stealth tech, and strike when they least expect it." It wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about sending a message to the Council. Humanity wasn't just a weak, defenseless species. They were capable of great things, of unimaginable feats when cornered. They had no intention of rolling over. The human fleet went into high alert. Every ship was equipped with the latest in stealth technology and decoy systems. The asteroids that surrounded Earth's orbit were perfect for hiding and launching surprise attacks. The fleet wasn't large compared to the Council's, but it had become a symbol of human resilience, and that symbol had only grown stronger after their first victory. They were ready for the next phase. The Council, meanwhile, had no idea what was waiting for them. Their fleet approached Earth with the assumption that they would crush whatever resistance was left. They were about to experience the next level of humanity's defiance. As the Council's ships entered the final stages of their approach, the humans made their move. Small, nimble ships darted out from behind asteroids, launching precision strikes at the Council's forward vessels. The Council was momentarily caught off guard. The stealth technology, combined with the element of surprise, allowed the humans to inflict significant damage. The initial barrage was only the beginning. The humans had planned for this, knowing that every attack had to count. The Council's larger ships retaliated with full force. Their weapons lit up space, sending massive beams of energy toward the human fleet. The energy blasts tore through space, narrowly missing the human ships. But the humans were ready. They had anticipated the Council's response. They dodged, weaved, and counterattacked with pinpoint accuracy. The battle was fierce, and the space around Earth became a chaotic mess of energy beams, explosions, and debris. Admiral Marshall watched from the Endurance as the battle unfolded. Her eyes never left the screen, her mind racing through strategies and tactics. The humans were holding their own, but it wasn't enough. The Council's power was immense, and they had no intention of giving up. The fight would continue, but humanity's advantage lay in their creativity, their ability to think on their feet. The Council might have the numbers, but the humans had the heart. "Admiral, we've detected something," an officer called out. "It's a message, encrypted with a code we've never seen before." Marshall's heart skipped a beat. The Council had long ago mastered communication encryption. For the message to be so advanced, it meant the Council was trying to send something of great importance. "Put it through," she ordered, her voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. The screen flickered, and a voice echoed through the bridge. It was the voice of an alien leader, the one who had commanded the attack against Earth. "Humans," the voice said, "you have proven yourselves capable of more than we anticipated. But know this, your resistance is futile. You are outnumbered, and your defeat is inevitable. Surrender now, and we will grant you mercy. Continue this fight, and we will show you the full might of the Council." The message ended abruptly, and the room fell silent. Admiral Marshall's face remained stoic. She had expected something like this. The Council had underestimated them once before, and now they were trying to intimidate humanity into submission. But the humans had already made up their minds. There would be no surrender. There would be no mercy. "We will fight," Marshall said, her voice filled with quiet strength. "We will fight until the very end. They will learn that humanity never surrenders." The message had only strengthened the resolve of the human fleet. The Council had made a grave mistake by threatening Earth. It was not just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for honor, for freedom, and for the future of humanity. As the battle raged on, the tide began to shift. The humans had faced the full force of the Council's military might and had not flinched. The Council had come to Earth believing it would be an easy victory. But now they were learning the hard truth. Humanity would never back down. And this was only the beginning. The battle for Earth was far from over. But humanity had proven that they could stand up to the galaxy's greatest powers. And as long as they drew breath, they would keep fighting. For Earth, for their people, for their future.